Let's continue our tour of the menu commands. Looking at the Canvas menu, we can resize an image. Using pixels is best unless you want to also change the resolution. So if I simply make this 500 pixels wide, it will automatically create the corresponding height change, and when I click OK, I now have enlarged the image. I'll undo that. Let's look at canvas size. With canvas size, we're going to be adding blank pixels to any of the edges, or all of the edges if we wish. So I'll simply add 50 pixels to the top and 50 pixels to the left. And now I see the results of that. I'll undo. We'll skip surface lighting because there is a much more powerful set of lighting effects available in the effects menu. Let's show impasto. There's no impasto strokes here. I'm going to turn to our blank image and make some impasto strokes. So let's go to the impasto category. And with coarse impasto jitter, let's make this 100% size by double-clicking the magnifier tool. Let's also use dry, clumpy impasto. Either of those will show us a thick paint effect. With Canvas Hide Impasto, now those strokes have flattened out. I can show impasto once again. I can actually eliminate impasto altogether by using the clear impasto command, and so that's gone. Let's go to the Set Paper Color command. If I choose a color, and I'll make it a pale yellow, use the Set Paper Color command. This means that an eraser will reveal the paper color, which in this case is now yellow. If I want to make the entire canvas the paper color, all I need to do is use Command or Control A to select all. And when I delete, I have now established the paper color, because basically I erased the entire image. Now let's look at rulers. If you want to show rulers, they will appear at the upper and left edges. You don't have to use inches. If you're not an American, you might want to change your ruler options to something a little bit more sensible. There they are. And I'll just cancel that. There are a couple of very handy composition items. If we show divine proportion, and if we open the composition panels, which give us divine proportion, also it's grouped with the layout grid. Divine proportion is enabled. Here's where I can change its orientation. I can change its size. Depending on what my image is, I can use this to help crop or define a focal point that is pleasing. Disable divine proportion and enable the layout grid. With the layout grid, you can choose to have equal or unequal spaces that you can use for a number of purposes. There are perspective guides as well. Let's look at Enable Perspective Guides, and I'm just going to disable the layout grid so you can see that better. Zoom out. Pour some gray into this image because that will help the perspective lines show up a little bit better. There they are. And if I actually use the Perspective Guides tool, I can then move these lines around and accommodate just about any sort of perspective that I need. So I will then go back to the Canvas menu. Symmetry in mirror mode or kaleidoscope mode is just the same as the tool for mirror painting in the toolbox and the tool for kaleidoscope painting. With kaleidoscope painting, I'll simply use the last tool that we had. Notice what's happening is my strokes are being restricted to the perspective lines. And I can show you that you can disable the perspective guided strokes. And so now I'll be able to make a stroke that goes any which way. And that's actually quite fun. So back to the Canvas menu. The bottom section has to do with color settings and profile management. So we will just skip those for the moment. And let's dismiss this canvas without saving it. We'll turn now to the Layers menu, and we have a section devoted to layers, but there are a few things I would like to show you here. If I choose the strawberry, for example, and use the drop and select feature, now there is a selection on my canvas that I can fill or paint on or do whatever I wish. I'll make that strawberry visible once again. I also want to show you that with the leaf, and I'll just make everything else invisible, and I'll also deselect the strawberry. The leaf is in hard light composite method, but I'll change it to default. Suppose I want to paint on the leaf. This color is as good as any. Let me find an airbrush tool. Digital airbrush, that should do it. Now notice, as I paint the leaf, I'm also painting the background. I'm going to undo that and prevent the background from being painted by enabling the Preserve Transparency option. So now with Preserve Transparency, and notice this gray and white checkerboard is the transparency behind the leaf. That means I will not be able to paint anything that is transparent. So sure enough, I've been able to apply the paint only to the leaf, not to the background. Let's take a break here, and when we come back, we will go to the Brushes menu.